One final set of items I wish to make known, which are similar to the greatly appreciated efforts of Karen Burke on the Miller-Driscoll Statement of Requirements. Chris Finkelstein is working closely with Dr. Richards on an effort to increase visibility to district communications. One of the first items that the town will see in the near future is a frequently asked questions section of the district website. This will become an evolving effort on our part to keep the town better informed on the inner workings of the district, ensure questions posed and answers provided on a multitude of topics, which we anticipate will grow over time. Initial topics are anticipated to include the budget process, how it works and where to find information, and how and why we use standardized tests, just as an example. Additionally, Lori Rothstein and Laura Schwem have started a research effort so we can all better understand the topic of student fees. I anticipate that we'll hear more on these efforts in the coming months. Lastly, please make an effort to get out and vote in May. Regardless of where each of us comes down on any of the issues that we're currently facing, it's an important part of our democratic process, and it's an important part of our responsibility as citizens and stewards of Wilton's future. Thank you. Dr. Richards.
Okay. Good evening. This is really, as many of you know, a wonderfully busy and challenging time of the year as we are in our fourth quarter. It seems hard to imagine that we're at the fourth quarter of a school year. There's a great deal of work underway at this time, as always the case. Some of the things, and this is a very small list of things that are going on, but there is work preparing for the upcoming Tri-State Consortium follow-up visit on language arts that will occur on May 1st. There is continuing work. Tim and others have been working on the strategic plan. There are going to be some comments tonight from Mr. Kennedy on that plan as we head toward the annual report to the board on the plan later this semester. There are staff appraisals, performance reviews that are underway, special education, PPTs, reviews, other processes in special ed. Work on the master scheduling is really in full bloom. So there's a great deal of work going on. Also, we're involved in planning for some of the culminating events to the end of the school year. Finally, and my least favorite one has been the work that's been underway on the HR director search, which we're grudgingly engaging in. Julie and Ken are chairing a committee on that, as you know, and we have a good pool of candidates for this position, which is reassuring. We have a reading screening process that is going to take place right after the break. It took place, I beg your pardon. And then right after the break, we will have the first round of interviews. So we will report further to the board on that. But it's an exciting, two of you, Mr. Likely and Ms. Burke, are on that committee. So it's an exciting process, an important process, and we're taking it very seriously. A lot of things are happening at the schools. I always love this part of the report. The high school has had a very exciting past 2 weeks with extensive community involvement. Last week, the school held its annual Fine and Performing Arts Festival with events scheduled throughout the week. Numerous local artists and musicians presented to students and staff. There were workshops, concerts. One of the things that happens at this time of year are the scholarship concerts for the high school. The first one was the strings concert 3 weeks ago. Then last week, the choral concert, and then last night we were treated to a fabulous band concert with our two of our three jazz ensembles, our wind ensemble, and our concert band. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can obviously get all the bands, the groups, but it was a great evening. The week culminated last week with an activity period featuring career panels arranged by the school in collaboration with the Wilton Education Foundation, and another example of the energy and support of the foundation. Special thanks to Heidi von Hoffman and Kit Smith and all the wonderful WEF volunteers. I had a chance. There were 4 panels. These were for sophomores and juniors, and there was one panel. The theme was healthcare industry. We had physician. We had people working in the healthcare industry. There was a business and finance group, and there was a, help me, Jim, I'm trying to block on the other two. There was I think an arts group, and then there was a more of a teachers school. No, it wasn't school. I made the mistake one year. I might tell a quick story. I made the mistake of volunteering to sign up for people who might be interested in school administration as a career, and I was excited because I had 8 kids or something showed up to my section. And there were 58 kids at the investment banking session. And I said, this is great, I'm really excited. What made you decide to come here? And they said, all the other sections were full. So it was a moment of high self-esteem. But the panelists were good, really good. And I think the thing about it that was good is they told stories about how their school preparation helped them in their careers, as did the Middlebrook panelists the week before. But then they talked about qualities like persistence and resilience and their failures. One panel, Kit Smith, the moderator, asked the panel, how many of you got into your first, and this is so good for juniors to hear particularly, and seniors, how many of you got into your first choice college? And only one of the panelists raised his hand. He said, it's the only one I applied to. And then they used that as a segue into, persistence and really working towards your dream and dusting yourself off after you fail. And it was a terrific day. So we really thank WEF. I can't express that enough. The freshmen and seniors, another wonderful event, attended a presentation by Kathy Snow. She also presented to the faculty. We're going to hear some more tonight from some special presenters. Ms. Snow's, she's a renowned inclusion specialist, talking about the importance of including students with learning disabilities into the mainstream and the value of that, the importance of that, and reinforcing our commitment to inclusion. In all ways, classroom, and we're going to hear about some other exciting things tonight. This was a result, her being here was a result of a collaboration between the Wilton Public Schools, the Top Inclusion Model Club, and the Support Services Parent Advisory Board, several of whom are here tonight. In addition, on Thursday, the high school, again, the second annual luncheon for senior citizens in the Zellner Gallery. The PTA was marvelous in helping us. Our new culinary arts teacher had some of her students learning how to set up for a big function. And the 70 seniors were treated to a nice luncheon. They had a string quartet. I guess it was a quartet plus a bongo player, which I've never heard with a string quartet. But it was pretty cool. And then they went into after lunch, we gave some brief remarks of thanks for all that they mean to this community. And we went into the Clune Center for a concert, which was terrific. And we got some wonderful feedback. And I think, again, they reinforced with our seniors the fact that they are very much a part of the community, and the schools are very much committed to including them. We talk about inclusion of students, but we also, I think, we're looking at generational inclusion. This week has been another exciting week with the World Languages Festival, which is a meaningful cultural experience for our students, featuring cultural and linguistic presentations by our students, original poetry presentations, documentaries on the environment, and my favorite, international bake sale. So it's been a very positive couple of weeks here at the high school. Middlebrook is also, there's a lot of great things happening there. Elliot Connors, 8Y student, reported that on March 26th through the 30th, they held the second annual Adaptive Sports Center soccer tournament at Middlebrook. The tournament began last year when the Middlebrook student government decided to hold a fundraiser to benefit the Adaptive Sports Center, a program that helps disabled youngsters participate in recreational activities. Michael Ukrapina, an 8th grader at Middlebrook, has a sister who attends the center based in Crested Butte, Colorado, and his mother, Ms. Kimber Felton, is a member on the board. Last year, nearly 80 children played in the tournament, and we were able to raise over $400 for this worthy cause. The tournament occurred this past week at Middlebrook, as I said, and the really appreciative of the village market, donated concessions to be donated, sold at the games. The market, as you know, has been extraordinarily generous to the schools. The Wilton Sports Shop also been generous, donated a soccer ball for a raffle prize and gift cards as a prize for champions. And with the help of our sponsors and nearly 80 students, this is cool, 80 students' participation, we were able to raise over $550 for Adaptive Sports Center. The culmination of the event took place on Friday, March 30th, in an exciting championship game that pitted a skilled 6th grade team against a more experienced 8th grade squad. The game also featured a halftime show, which presented Millbrook students' musical talents with performances ranging from Lady Gaga to a vocalist to an experienced harmonica player. The victory went to the 6th graders in an unexpected triumph. And hopefully next year we'll be able to hold this fundraiser again and raise even more money for the center. So I think a really terrific event at Millbrook. Cider Mill, the 5th graders, we talk at times when we hear presentations and at budget season about Ambler Farm. Another example of Ambler Farm is that the 5th graders have been there for the Underground Railroad simulation, which was created as a culminating experience for the 5th grade Civil War unit. Students bring what they have learned to the classroom and apply it in a physical scenario where they take on the role of slave families and have to navigate some trails to freedom. Traders, slave owners, bounty hunters, etc. are some of the personalities they encounter and or avoid on their mission. I think this is so important as an authentic kind of a learning experience for our youngsters. It's meant for students to reflect on the reason for the Underground Railroad. The hope is to give them opportunity to find the aha moment that you may not necessarily achieve in textbooks and classroom discussions alone. Stepping inside the shoes of a slave in that time period, albeit for a short time, enables students to view the plight of a people from their perspective. So we really want, with this unit, as with all social studies units, students to hopefully take away some deeper understanding of the freedoms that they enjoy as citizens. They may not always see the importance, having taught the Civil War many, many years ago with many, many students. They may not see the importance of it as it happened so long ago. I think they really can get a flavor for the importance it had to our heritage. The link then between then and now and how then has affected the now really illustrates the purpose and importance of these studies. So again, a very powerful learning experience. Jenny reports that the 3rd graders have spent the last month engaged in reading some biographies. Each student selected an interesting person to read about, and they also, in addition to reading the biographies, they are learning how to take notes and identify accomplishments and struggles that help shape a person. They then continued their work into Writer's Workshop to learn to take notes and turn them into organized paragraphs, and from there they created a written report and a poster. They then write a 2-minute speech about the person and who this person was and why they are important to the world, and then parents are invited to the Living Museum for the children to share their speeches. I think one of the things I'm most proud of our youngsters, and many of you saw it at the Tech Expo a few weeks ago, is the ability that so many of our youngsters have to speak in public. I know, so many adults are petrified of having to speak before groups, and I think the kinds of practice and experience our kids have will serve them well throughout their lives, and this is yet another example of it. And finally, Miller Driscoll. For 3 nights this week, Miller Driscoll held their science fair. Students learned skills learned at school and using the developmental method of the scientific model or scientific method. They work with their parents at home on a project for the science fair, and it is my deep hope that it's the youngsters who are doing the work and not the parents. I've seen some very sophisticated projects come back from youngsters who live in a home where the mom is an engineer and dad's a construction executive, and mine always looked like a few pieces of sugar cubes glued together poorly, but some of them come in looking like the Triborough Bridge. Participation in this is voluntary, but the fair has become so popular, and this is really, I think, another tribute to work that's being done at Cider Mill. 42% of the kids participate, even though it's a voluntary event. About 103 kindergartners participated. First grade, 153, and 120 second graders, for a total of 376 kids. Special thanks to Mrs. Jane Jaressi, who's the coordinator of the fair, and assisted by 2 paraprofessionals, Mrs. Nancy Peters and Pat Snave. So, again, a lot of terrific things happening in our district as we move into the final quarter.
Thank you very much. Moving on to committee reports. Does anybody have anything they want to speak about?
It's not really an official committee, but I sit as a member of the Wilton Task Force to Reduce Substance Abuse. And you should have all received, and most of the people here should have received an invitation by now to take this for a Wilton Community Conversation, which is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, April 25th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Trackside Teen Center. The Wilton Task Force is headed up by co-chairs Colleen Fawcett, who leads Wilton Youth Services, and Sunny Stanfield, who is a high school junior. They co-chair the committee, and Sunny, along with 4 other young ladies from the high school, Margaret Creeth from Youth Services, Nan Marola, Heidi Von Hoffman, who has no free time at all, but is always volunteering, and myself, we've been putting together this conversation, and it should be a really dynamic evening. We'll be presenting the results of the Wilton Youth and Parent surveys that were done at Middlebrook and the high school this past fall. We also have a keynote speaker, Chris Brown, who is a child psychologist who will be talking about teenage brain and the effect of alcohol on its development. And then there'll be breakout sessions for group discussions about the topic. So a very eventful evening, and we invite you all to attend.
Thank you.
Well, just last night, a long time ago, I was at the Cider Mill strategic plan, the progress committee, and I just left. It was always wonderful to hear teachers talk about their students and what goes on in the classroom. But last night was amazing when they started turning up their document cameras, and I wish the whole town could have heard them, because as people attack our technology budget, just hearing this teacher describe, she had brought in a flower and took it apart, and the kids could watch it like it was magnified, and it was, and just the excitement that involved. As you can imagine, you can't let a whole class of 5th graders, attack a whole, imagine what would happen. But they could see it, and they could see pieces of the flower that they never would have noticed or thought about, but as they're learning about that. And I thought that's a great way of using their document camera and the technology, and just really this teacher's enthusiasm for what she was doing in her classroom and her students' response to it was just so exhilarating for me to hear. And I just want to share that.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Energy Commission.
Yes, ma'am.
It was probably about 3 weeks ago that the superintendent from Weston contacted our superintendent and said, we've got this program that has helped us conserve energy. And so Dr. Richards contacted Bruce Hampson, the chair of the Energy Commission, who then contacted someone from this program, and they came down to Wilton and presented the program to us. And Bruce and I were sufficiently impressed with it so that we met with Ken Post this morning and walked him through the program. It's basically based on behavioral change. And Weston, over the last 25 months, has saved 29% in their energy costs.
Wow.
So we recommended, the Energy Commission recommended that the schools at least take the next step to investigate it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I guess I won't be left out then.
Report something.
I attended the town hall meeting on Tuesday night that Governor Malloy presided over regarding SB 24, which is currently under consideration by the General Assembly. Those of you who have been following it know that that is his attempt at major education reform. And the way he explains it, it's very closely linked to the waiver from No Child Left Behind mandates. He had some very interesting facts. Of the 30 lowest performing districts in the state, they account for 41% of all students and 37% of all teachers. So it sort of laid out how dire it is that something get done. It was a very interesting conversation, very well attended. As I came to find out, I was sitting on the dividing line of the union teachers and the charter school representatives, and it was very heated. Just a lot of very strong emotion. People were not holding back at all, letting the governor know what they felt about it. As he kept explaining it, the teachers union signed off on the original bill that was presented in January or February, which has since met with a lot of negativity from the individual teacher units. So it's as Governor Malloy must have said 15 times, it's a process, and somehow or other, let's hope something gets passed. I spoke very briefly to Gail Lavielle and Tony Boucher were both there, and asked them what they thought was going to happen. They seem to think something will pass. Whether or not it's enough to impress the Federal Department of Education that it deserves a waiver from NCLB remains to be seen. So it was very interesting, learned a lot, and you left with a great appreciation for the teachers. And one after another they got up there just talking about don't ruin our relationship with the kids, and et cetera.
That's wonderful. Thank you. The last comment, do you have any community reports other than what you've covered, Gary?
No.
Okay, the last point that I want to make is right now the Wilton Education Foundation has the Reading Rocks program going on. I'm sure you've all seen the posters around town. Anyone with young kids in, I think it's Cider Mill and Miller Driscoll, please.
Middlebrook.
Middlebrook as well?
No.
I don't think it goes up.
No.
I could be mistaken about it. I don't think it goes to Middlebrook. But please look into that. If you have a young learner, consider getting involved in the program. It's really designed to not only entice young readers to read more, but get their families involved and do so for a good cause, which is to raise funds for the Wilton Education Foundation. At this point, I'd like to ask Ann Paul to come up and speak with us about Disability Awareness Month.
Oh, maybe
See you, Mark.
Oh, you're so funny. We're the group that brings party. There you go. That's what Karen was waiting for.
So we brought some homemade fortune cookies.
Oh, what's the name?
Well, I was going to make us do the presentation first.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We're going to treat it.
It's only for good students.
I wanted dessert first.
You have to be a good listener first.
Yes.
Everybody, George.
See,
and
we're just like big
everybody
kids.
listen.
Look at he's folding his hands.
We promised we'll get to
This is a nice group.
Well, thank you
this.
for
Is
coming.
very nice. I'd like to introduce the board to George Copley, J.J. Monroe, who are the founders and co-presidents of the Top Inclusion Model Club at the high school, and their wonderful faculty advisor, Mike Walsh, who's in his other life an English teacher. And we are extremely appreciative of Mr. Walsh's input and his support. He volunteered and has been a wonderful support. So before George and JJ speak to the board, I'd like to just provide a little background information, if I could. The Top Inclusion Model Club at Wilton High School was started 2 years ago as a pilot organization by JJ and George to further inclusion of students with special needs in all aspects of the Wilton Public School community. With the support of the Parent Advisory Board, and I certainly acknowledge my parent colleagues who are in the back, and their advisor, Mike Walsh, the group has grown in its impact in numbers, and at times as many as 150 high school students have been participants in the club. Their mission is to inform themselves, their classmates, and staff about the ways in which authentic inclusion can take place in school field trips, school dances, and activity nights. Meeting on a regular basis, the group has scheduled speakers in the areas of special needs to provide information about both the difficulties and the strengths of students with special needs. And I think that's really been their emphasis, about the strengths of our students. Armed with this knowledge and wearing their wonderful club t-shirts, the group then volunteers for school events as appropriate and always in conjunction with school administration and the PTA. They've been on the dance floor at Middlebrook School. They've been at the cider mill field day running races, which the adults who usually have to do it are thrilled that they aren't running, and our high school athletes are running. And I think in many ways the group has made clear that the modeling, especially the modeling and encouragement they provide, has been powerful and very, very positive for all of us who have had the impact of their efforts. This month in particular, the Top Inclusion Model Club has helped in our district marking April as Disability Awareness Month. They've raised funds, done enormous arrangements to bring Kathy Snow in, a nationally known speaker with many logistics involved, and they've worked very hard on a program called Spread the Word to End the Word. And I'll ask George and JJ now to bring it alive for you a little bit.
Well, thank you, Ms. Paul. Primarily, thank you for having us here to speak. We've always wanted to bring it to the top. Always wanted to spread the word. So, I guess we'll start chronologically. The idea grew in our freshman year, but obviously being freshmen, we were naive towards everything in the high school, so we took our first year to sort of experience and get used to the ridiculous lockers and everything like that comes along with it. But around sophomore year, we JJ and I got together, and she and her mother had this idea of a general club that would address all forms of inclusion. And I think it started specifically, JJ will tell you about it, with her brother Ian, who, go ahead, you address that.
Okay. Well, my brother Ian has disabilities. He's now in 7th grade, which scares me. But anyways, he has this really tight group of friends, and he's had these group of friends since he was in kindergarten, and it's really started with 3, and it's grown into, they each brought a friend to 6, and to now he has hundreds of friends. We see them in the grocery store. I don't know who he's saying hi to, but they've really naturally included him, and because they've gotten to experience him, and it was normal for him to be in their classroom and sort of things like that, they modified kickball on the playground in 3rd grade for him. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. And sorry. And he also, they throw surprise birthday parties for him. They do crazy things like this, and it just makes us so happy. And this is kind of what we want every student who has a disability or who feels excluded in the school system to feel, especially with all this bullying that's happening. We want everybody to feel like a part of their community. And so that's kind of our goal with our club. And we've broadened our mission from helping people with disabilities to helping all of our peers in general. Especially, we started in the younger schools, Cider Mill and Middlebrook, and we've kind of moved our awareness mission up to the high school, which is especially shown with Spread the Word to End the Word. But
yes. And so from there, we got the group. We told all of our friends who told their friends, and you know how gossip spreads through the high school. So in our first meeting, we had like almost 100 members there waiting to hear what this all was about, because we named the club Top Inclusion Models, and some were expecting a runway and brought all their dresses and everything like that. But so majority of yes, we told them all what we were going for, and we left it very open for them to think about, and we left them the option to return, and majority did return. And from there on, our meetings consisted of 70 to 25 to 50 to 10, depending on the students and members' schedules, because sports and everything else comes in the way sometimes. But we began by letting everyone know what we were doing, and then we started getting professional speakers to come in and let us and share information and ways of natural inclusion, of ways of bringing someone who doesn't seem to be feeling too comfortable in an environment and bringing them in and having all their peers sort of do the same thing. And they don't even realize that maybe this person was excluded, but now they're just playing kickball or doing whatever. So our sophomore year was more of letting our club members learn and realize that it's not that difficult to do this. So we continued on to our junior year. At the end of sophomore year, we put our training to the test, and we went to the Cider Mill Field Days. We had 3 groups of 15, one for each day. And basically the administrator said, okay, this is what you need to do and you need to do, and they went and left us to do it all. So we had 1 or 2 members at each station, and we used the skills of modifying the activities and also using our inclusion new skills to help make everyone feel like this was like their field day. This was the day where you didn't have to be in class, you were outside playing with your friends and enjoying the environment. And after the 3rd day, I stayed on the last day, and at the end of it all, we had parents coming up to us, thanking us, and teachers saying they never felt almost like such a warm environment, such a family environment where everyone felt together, and no one, if someone had been left out, they're immediately brought back in to play. And then we continued on to our junior year, where we recruited more freshmen, recruited more sophomores, and even had more juniors from our grade come in because they were so interested to hear about what we had been doing. And we
Well, spread the word to end the word is kind of when we really got our mission out and when people really started to recognize who we were and kind of the impact we were making, especially in our school. And so what it is it's a campaign by Special Olympics, I think, started this campaign, as well as Best Buddies, and we kind of wanted to make a big impact on our school. And so the mission is to stop the word retarded from being used in any context. And it's a large mission. You know, there was a big PSA last year, which we used a lot in our kind of advertising. And this year we made stickers, which were a big success. Like, they're on the backs of everybody's phones. We had this big pledge that people were signing in the cafeteria, saying that they're going to make a conscious effort to try to refrain from this word. And just, I think, even if people aren't going to always, you know, sometimes it slips out, or maybe they don't understand the full concept of the idea, even if they're just made aware of what they're saying and how they're impacting people, we thought we could make a positive difference. And, you know, we got a lot of good feedback back from that, and I think, you know, so we had more members, and then having last week Kathy Snow, which is just kind of was our ultimate dream for her to come, especially for her senior year, you know, leave it with a bang sort of thing. It was just such a great experience, and we've gotten so many comments, especially from the freshmen, about how effective she was and how inspirational she was.
So by the end of our junior year, what had started off as a subtle group of kids trying to get everyone to feel together, we grew to this like enormous entity that became almost overwhelming for me and JJ, because every week we had somewhere to go, someone to talk to, like a new meeting to schedule. But with the help of other juniors, because other people, our peers stepped up, the ones that had come to every meeting, have taken all the information we provided and put it to heart, started helping us out, and we sort of left even the younger members to start taking care of the things we had been taking care of when we were sophomores, such as organizing fundraisers or finding events we can go to. And then senior year came around, and me and JJ sort of started thinking, well, why don't we try and spread this a little bit more? Why don't we try and get maybe the whole community to realize? So we came up with the idea of bringing Kathy Snow, who would talk to the faculty, the parents, the students, sort of address every aspect of the community. And a few months ago, Norwalk City Hall asked me and my friend Georgia Blatchford to come, also a member of Top Inclusion Models, to come and share what our club had been doing. So we showed up sort of not really prepared, not knowing what we were getting ourselves into, and we ended up having to talk for roughly 25 minutes, similar to what we're doing tonight, about what we had done. And to be honest, I'm trying to be modest here, but we really blew them away, I think. We really,
Don't hold back, George.
in all seriousness, because afterwards, I mean, mothers were coming up to us in tears and all the great stuff that comes along with it. But by the end, they really said, okay, we'll be in touch, and I've gotten tons of emails from them saying, can you send members here, and when can you come talk next? And they're trying to sort of, because they're having some bullying issues, I suppose, as well, and acts of exclusion, but they're really trying to start a similar club. They have a Best Buddies program, I believe, but it isn't as strong, they say, as the one here at Wilton, so they're really trying to get kids informed. So from this, it seems that we've started off like from scratch, telling our peers, and now we're seeing going through Fairfield County almost. So if hopefully we've assigned new people to take over next year, and as for we are graduating this year, and also new members are coming in each year. So hopefully, if we can keep this going, it'll keep growing and growing, as will inclusion. And so from there, we're up to this point now where we've had Kathy Snow come and really address everything and reinforce everything we've been going for. And we're still going to keep doing bake sales and everything until the last possible second when we're out of here. So
It's kind of been a surreal experience. Like, you know, most clubs, we start out as 10 people, you know, you try to do as much as you possibly can, but we were just overwhelmed by how many of our friends, you know, and just people in general wanted to be a part of this. And I mean, 150 people, that's like a tenth of the school, which is pretty incredible. And even if they only have come to 2 or 3 meetings, or they can't come during the spring season, just them getting to come and participate and, you know, absorb some of this information could be so powerful. And I think that our mission has really evolved into something really cool for the community, and I hope it continues. Hopefully, you know, it all goes well, especially with Mr. Walsh.
Yeah. Well, we see if the board has any questions or...
It's fantastic. Such an amazing story, and we applaud and thank you for all of your efforts. I'd like to understand what some of the greatest challenges were when you started, and if there are things that we as a board you think ought to consider that might make the journey in the future a little easier.
Well, one of the challenges that we kind of hit at first, I don't know if you could help in any way, but it was that we weren't able to legally know who had a disability at these events. And so what our initial, you know, feeling was is that we were going to be kind of like cool high schoolers taking the place of paraprofessionals almost. And instead of having, you know, an older person or an adult at their hip the whole entire time, you know, these cool high schoolers would be there instead and would be helping just modify certain activities and things like that. But what it had to become was we really had to be, because we didn't know who had a disability, we had to be aware and focus on just kind of bringing people in who were feeling left out, you know. There are people who didn't have a partner in certain events, and, you know, there's uneven numbers, so you just kind of jump in quickly and start playing and kind of bringing other people into a conversation. It's very natural, and we try to make it that way, so it doesn't look too obvious or anything like that. And we want kids to start doing this on their own. And eventually, those kids, by the end of the night, you know, you're together for 3 hours, are usually included in the activities with their peers, which is the ultimate goal.
So any of these activities that you go to, like the Cider Field Days or the dances, you're not given a list or you're not assigned a certain person.
No.
So they're not necessarily kids with special needs even.
I think that's what JJ and George have found, that when they go into a setting, if there's a student is just hanging on the side, somewhat shy, it doesn't matter. They're there to help all the children feel comfortable and participate.
For example, last year there was a girl, and my friend Megan went to the bathroom or something, and there was this girl in the bathroom, and she was just kind of staring at the mirror, like she thought, you know, she was leaving, but she wasn't. She just stayed in there the whole entire time, and these parents, like these mothers, knew about it, and they didn't know what to do. And so Megan's like, JJ, what should we do? So we literally spent, you know, we tried to get her to come out or like go get a snack with us or something like that, but we ended up just sitting in the bathroom on the floor having a conversation with her. It sounds gross, but I didn't think of that.
Until you heard yourself say it, right?
It's in the budget, don't worry.
We just had a conversation with her, and so we didn't want her to feel uncomfortable when all these other girls and their little cliques are coming in. So we just had a conversation, you know, said hi to everybody, sort of just made it almost like we were meant to be there, you know, we're just having a conversation sort of thing. So.
But now that parents and students know that this club exists, is there a way in which they can be proactive and contact you ahead of time to say, you know, my child's going to this event, can you whatever, buddy
We're-
up with that person.
We actually have an active Facebook group, and so, for example, a mother once posted, my child needs someone to play basketball with every weekend or so to practice for the upcoming team. And she didn't even mention that they had a disability or not. It was sort of just like, could someone come and play? And immediately someone posted, yes, what time, and here's my contact information. So through Facebook, which I believe may be more of a youth use thing, but also adults are using it as well, they can access it and do that. We have an email and stuff, I think. So
Yeah.
it's definitely accessible, and our resources are easy to get. So yeah.
You have a web page that links to the website, the school website, or
We don't know how to work.
But the Parent Advisory Board
Does.
has a website, and you
there's
can link
channels
it.
there.
And we have an email that topinclusionmodels@gmail.com, which is, just basic, and people can contact us. We've had Ableist, which is a Fairfield County organization that provides programs for people with disabilities. We're in contact with them. We worked with them and gone to some of their events. And Norwalk has contacted us, and so has Richfield and Westport. So, word is spreading, and I think people are really interested in trying to incorporate something like this in their school districts. So,
I really applaud was it George who wrote that beautiful letter several years ago? Was that George?
Actually, it was
Or was
an
that another
offshoot
student?
of this group, which is Top Soccer,
Oh, okay.
and Kyle Diedrich.
It was
and-
Kyle. Okay.
Yeah,
I just
who
remember
has
it.
formed, their friend who has formed an inclusive soccer league,
Yeah.
and enormous participation, and students, no matter what their level of skill in playing, are out there on Saturdays with high school athletes, and everybody's playing, and it's had an enormous reception. But that was Kyle wrote a beautiful letter.
But I just think, and I've talked with JJ about this, I think the cultural change you're trying to bring about is so hard. But you look at our society, how many of us in our younger days, it was common to hear, racial statements made, and just kind of casually, like it was okay. And then that became, as the civil rights movement took hold and our culture moved ahead, that became less and less acceptable. And then you look. I heard last night the actress, I can't remember which, Judd
Ashley Judd.
It's Ashley. I was saying Naomi, but Ashley Judd was talking about the whole thing with people's body image and all that, and remarks people were making, the mean remarks. And I think what you're trying to do to really stop the use of the R word. I mean, it's a slow, painful. You take 2 steps forward, right, and
Yeah.
1 backwards sometimes. But I really think that's going to have a huge impact in moving our culture in a very healthy way. And I really applaud that.
thank you.
So you've helped us all grow, I think, in that way. So keep it up. So.
Just to comment on that. Oh, sorry.
No,
Do you mind if I go? You're completely correct, and I think what the most powerful way we've been doing that is by modeling it ourselves, and that's really where Top Inclusion Models sort of separates itself maybe from other clubs, is that we put all the information we learn, we use all the money that is used for these speakers, and go out there and we put like 100% of our effort to just naturally making people feel comfortable. And from that, younger students see this. Peers from Middlebrook and Cider Mill and even Miller Driscoll realize, okay, when I'm in high school, that's what I want to be doing. Maybe I want to be making sure people are happy, as opposed to maybe following the flow and going with the bullying scene or anything like that. So.
But I think too, and the courage, I applaud the courage, because I know some of you are engaged in confronting adults who are careless and carelessly hurtful with language, and I think that in a tactful way of making that a learning experience for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's done properly, I think can be life-altering. And I applaud those of you, because I know that takes a lot of courage for a 17-year-old to go to an adult who has said something and say, let's talk about that, because it's just not going down well with me, and here's why. And I really think that's important, so I respect that.
Thank you.
And what a legacy you've left now
Yeah.
for Wilton High School.
Who's
So
taking
thank you
over
so
next?
much.
Thank you very much, but I think Lydia Freelick is
Okay.
going to be
Oh,
taking
wow.
over, who is just fantastic, and it's really been recruiting right now.
And then we're still evaluating the second
So hopefully a boy will be.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Well, that's
I'd be so proud. Yeah.
It finally kicked in, after all the work, we're ready to say, okay, we're ready.
And now Dr. Richards would like his fortune cookie.
No, I was going to say that I was going to ask the board for permission not to allow these two to graduate for another year. I know that's not their fantasy, but we'd love to
We
keep
do
them
actually
around.
control the diplomas. No, that's right. Just to reiterate, how do they find your Facebook page? How do people find it?
If they type into the search bar of Facebook, it's Top Inclusion Models, and it's the 2011. It's like 2011-2012. Because we wanted to, keep it up to date and stuff like that.
And next year there'll be a new one.
And your email address is topinclusionmodels@gmail.com?
Yes.
That's plural?
Yep, models.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give me mine and then do the board.
You're very welcome. The moms made it easier to take credit.
No, you're fine. Yeah. Thank you so
Go.
much.
I don't want to ruin any wires.
Yeah, be careful. Don't trip.
Yeah. Here you go. Don't want to mess anything up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great report.
I did the other face.
Now, as George and JJ are passing out party favors to the rest of the folks, I want to move on our agenda to the 2012-2013 operating budget. It's on as a review and discuss. As all of you know, the last time we were at this board table, we approved a 2% increase to our budget. We arrived at that through what I think we all feel was very thoughtful deliberation and consideration for the needs of the town and the needs of the district and the students. At the last Board of Finance meeting, they felt that we needed to go a bit further, and they have requested us to drop our budget down to 1.75%, which is approximately $180,000 below what we currently have approved. So during this portion of our meeting, we need to discuss that and deliberate on the best way to address that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Lakely. One of the ways as the staff has thought about this that we consider and I want to speak to tonight is the where we are with respect to our health benefits budget. This is a budget, as you know, because throughout the year you hear periodic reports from Mr. Post about the status of our budget, and he is, I assure you, he is monitoring the health benefit claim experience, which is a big driver of our budget on a weekly and certainly monthly basis. He works very closely, as you know, with our insurance advisor, a wonderful gentleman, Mr. Ed Norgard, who's presented to this board. And in light of that, based on our most recent claim projections, and Ken and Ed have spent a great deal of time looking at the claim experience. As you know, we were under budget earlier in the year, and we've gradually climbed out of the hole we were in, and it's a number that does move and can be somewhat volatile. But based on I think some thoughtful and conservative claim projections as to how we're going to end the year, it's their opinion, and I believe well-founded in their experience and research on this, that we're going to end the year in a favorable position in health benefits. One of the factors that they look at, and as you know, the committee, the town committee that dealt with this years ago, established some parameters for the reserves, and we have been prudent and have followed the path and the guidelines for that. So we have funded the reserves appropriately, and in light of that, it's our feeling the amount of money that we need to hit the 1.75 target for our budget is about $160,000. So our recommendation to this board is that we use that, take that from the insurance line to allow us to get to the point where our budget meets the guideline that Mr. Likely mentioned was established for us by the Board of Finance. So.
And I'd like to point out that even taking that reduction does not bring our budget down below what Ed's projection is for next year. We're still slightly above what his projection for claims are for next year.
So this would be taken out of what's anticipated for claims?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't have anything to do with the fee that we pay whoever to administer our claims?
No. We already took that reduction.
Yeah.
But
We
what
did renegotiate that.
Right.
Yeah,
We were able to
took that
get
reduction
some
recently.
savings there that helped us.
But Ken, what if we suddenly see surge in claims? Are we sure we're not leaving ourselves open to this?
Well, that's one thing we have the reserve for. And that could happen any year.
Right.
Typically, we try to budget pretty close to what Ed's projection is for the year, providing we have a sufficient reserve account.
And what are our reserves funded at now? I think it's a quarter, 100%, and then...
Corridor is always 100%.
There's a range for the...
The range for the IBNR is 100%. The corridor, the range is 65 to 85%, and we're at 81%.
Okay.
And then we have
So
a
we're on the
fluctuation
upper end.
reserve in addition to that. The total is about $4,063,000, and the town is contributing $200,000 to that this year. So at the end of the year, we should be around $4,270,000.
And since we're combined with the town now, what impact has the town's experience had on it?
I think they've been running right around budget for the year.
They have.
So they haven't hit the reserve.
Is there any impact that the new insurance plan that we're putting in place will have on this? Is there any concern in the unknown of moving to that new plan?
I would say there's probably a little bit of concern because it's obviously an estimate of the impact, and the estimate was about $604,000, which we factored into our calculations a couple of months ago. And again, given that the reserve is so robust, it really minimizes that concern.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well, we have the stop-loss insurance for anything catastrophic.
Right.
Right.
And that kicks in at what dollar?
Individual, it kicks in at $225,000. Aggregate at 125% of expected claims.
And our fund balance more than covers that as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, our reserve balance covers at right now about 80% of that core of the aggregate.
Okay. Okay, so there is some exposure there.
In theory, yes.
Right. Okay.
But we're still on the high end of the guidelines
Right.
from that
Right, and with
86 value.
With the $225,000 individual stop loss, it would be it would take a lot of people with big claims to hit the aggregate stop loss, which is why the individual stop loss insurance is so much more expensive than the aggregate.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? How does the board feel about moving this to the consent agenda for approval as our plan going forward for the next meeting? And I think the administration needs to know what our feelings are moving forward. We have two choices. We could either amend the agenda and and approve it tonight, or we can put it on the consent agenda for next time. I know one of the concerns that we always have is that there's still several months left in the year, and there could be big swingers. So, feelings, thoughts on that?
I think it helps us sell our budget if the public knows ahead of time where this money is coming from, and in particular, that if we go forward with this proposal, that we are not going to be cutting program.
Yeah.
And can I make one more observation? Being that we are this deep into the year, when we have a fluctuation in 1 or 2 months right now, it doesn't impact the projection for next year as significantly as it would have if this was earlier, because you're trending out so much farther. It's a lot more predictable when you get closer, so it wouldn't have as big of an effect.
Okay.
I think it makes sense either tonight to do it or to have it on the consent, as you suggested. It's likely for the next meeting. It's still in advance of the town meeting on May 1st. So.
Okay.
Well, the next meeting is like April
26th.
2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
a few days.
It's just a few
before.
days before the town meeting.
So there's,
Is that okay with you,
why
timing-wise?
would we not do it tonight?
It's not
I would prefer to do it tonight.
tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
that way
Gil
we can
okay
sort of
with
get
that
the word out.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he
Yes,
is.
okay.
Yes, he is.
I think that this is a nice way to avoid going back in and cutting what could potentially be some painful areas in the budget. We've put some nice technology in, we've added courses, we've sort of set things, taken a step in the right direction, and this allows us to not take a step back from the progress we've made.
Right, and I'm comfortable with it because we're still over budget according to
I
our
think
consultant,
Kansas
and
did it.
we have considerable reserves
Yes.
to fall back on should there be a bad year.
I need a motion to amend the agenda to move this to an action item.
I move to amend the agenda.
Okay,
Move this
thank
to
you.
next.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Okay. It passes with greater than 2/3 votes. We'll move it to the action items. Next on our agenda is the Wilton Public Schools Strategic Plan update for review and discuss with Mr. Canty.
Well, as Dr. Richards indicated, we're into the home stretch. So our plan is to actually launch our year-end reports tonight with a discussion of the strategic plan, and then actually conclude our reports with a discussion in June of the results we've achieved this year. We really are, again, moving along, but of course with August hurricanes and October snowstorms, the home stretch is somewhat elongated this year. But having said that, on behalf of the entire Wilton Public Schools community, I would like to congratulate Dr. Richards for his unbelievable effort in avoiding snow days. We often celebrate our spring
You must
break.
know the man
Thanks to you.
upstairs
Put
pretty
up your
well.
snow sticks.
You know, he said that a month ago, and I said, "You're going to jinx us."
Totally jinx.
I did not take the snow sticks out until Easter
We
Sunday.
still have one more school day to get through.
One more day.
One more day.
I know it. It's remarkable.
Well,
It's
tonight
really
I
amazing.
hope to accomplish 4 primary objectives. I want to just take the board again through a quick review of the strategic plan, and then talk about our year 2 goals. This is the second year of our implementation phase. I want to talk about our goals that centered around communication and ownership of the plan, talk about the extent to which we tried to define what we call year 2 deliverables, and then give the board a sense of the process that we used to define how we were going to develop results and / metrics to measure our success in implementing the plan. So really tonight's effort is to try to save time in June when we present the results. I want to take you through the process tonight, ask you to put it into your memory banks so that when we come forward in June we can just get right into a discussion of the results. So a reminder that our strategic plan is based on a theory of action that looks at a series of if statements. And as you hopefully are well versed at this point, we talk about promoting a strong community involvement in our schools. We recognize the importance of having a highly trained and effective faculty and staff. And certainly, in terms of my work, we have an obligation to focus on curriculum and instruction. And develop our abilities in implementing effective assessment tools to gauge how well we are doing in our teaching and learning practices. We also talk about the academic, social, emotional needs of students. That students need to feel safe and comfortable in their learning environment so they can maximize their success. The point of emphasis around a recognition that technology is a great part of our lives and influences our educational environment, as the board well knows. And then our perennial conversation around the budget and our focus on making sure the community understands and hopefully gives us a sense that our budget does represent value as we move forward. So the then statement again, the idea here is that as students leave our school system, they'll possess the knowledge, skills, values, and passion to engage in necessary lifelong learning skills and be successful and productive in either post-high school experiences, whether that be in educational institutions or in the workforce. So again, it lands in 6 strands: the academic and social emotional needs, curriculum and instruction, technology, community involvement, quality of faculty and staff, and budget. Tonight, we want to focus on the first 4 in terms of our process. And again, our first goal was communication and ownership of the plan in year 2. In year 1, there was we all agreed that there was a good, solid understanding of the plan at the instructional leadership level in our district. So we really focused on an effort to try to make sure that all constituents across the school district had an understanding of its plan, of the plan. And of course, part of that was our effort to include the description of the plan in what has come to known as our super graphic. And again, I'm not going to get into the details tonight, but there are a series of tasks and focus areas within each of these 4 strands that were targeted. And I would encourage the public, if they want more specifics and want to dig in and drill down into the plan, they can access this on our website. In fact, as school officials, this was really guiding our work for this year. So back in August, when we met as a leadership team, we talked about some strategies that we could utilize to help, again, communicate the plan and build ownership of the plan. Our Central Curriculum Council is organized around these themes, so this is our team of instructional leaders. And as you look at curriculum, instruction, assessment practices, professional development, all of this is entwined, is embedded into the strategic plan. We also, for the benefit of the board, we made the effort to have targeted conversations. Hopefully you've heard the term strategic plan over and over again as we talk about our initiatives, not only in this forum, but also with our faculty and staff. We always try to circle back to the work that we're doing and see how it relates to the strategic plan. We've asked our teachers to formulate collaborative goals this year around aspects and tasks associated with the strategic plan. Essential questions have been framed around the strategic plan in terms of our study group work, our professional development efforts, again, centered around the strategic plan. We made the tour and did presentations to our PTAs around the plan and its contents. And then, of course, the budget. All centered and in the many presentations tried to make sure the community saw the alignment of our budget requests and the plan itself. So goal 2 then got into the idea of what we described again as year 2 deliverables. One of the concerns we have about the strategic plan is it's so broad in scope. So we made a determination going into our second year that as a leadership team, we were really going to try to target priorities. And to do so, we talked about trying to define those tasks that were high impact, high feasibility, high sustainability. And we worked as a leadership team in August to talk about those concepts and those issues. And then we sent our leadership teams back to their buildings to work with their ILs to target those tasks that, in effect, would be priorities for this year. Not at the expense of all the tasks in the plan, but again, would really be a targeted focus around our work this year. And what's interesting about that exercise is that the chosen tasks across the strands were so similar at each building, which in effect really reinforced the idea that this is systemic work. For example, and again, you'll hear more about this when we present in June, but in the academic and social emotional needs, what you see here are the tasks that each building identified as priority areas. And as you look across the grid, you'll see that the schools, in effect, chose, unbeknownst to each other, the same tasks as priority areas. So that's really helped us in terms of K-12 conversations. So in each of the 4 areas, we identified tasks that were of importance. Here you have the curriculum instruction strand, and you can see how the schools really zeroed in on data teamwork and scientific research-based interventions. Gary mentioned our tri-state visit that's coming up, 21st century skills, etc. In the technologies strand, a lot of focus on staff development, 21st century learning, etc. So again, the point I want to make here with the board was that the extent to which each building's leadership team prioritized tasks, and there was great consistency across the district in those tasks that were prioritized. Community involvement. Website, for example. So we then emerged from that work. It was probably, about the end of September, I think, at that point, where we had targeted focus areas. And now came the most challenging part of the work. And this has been a focus area in conversation, not only in this room, but across the community. What are the results? What are the metrics that really describe, from a quantitative and a qualitative point of view, our success in responding to the work that we do and developing action plans that, in fact, tell us that we're having an impact on student learning? So what we did is we looked at some of the language contained within the Tri-State Consortium work around assessment. I would like to take the time to read this to you because it's important. Every aspect of the work should be evaluated on the basis of the difference it has made in student performance. Evaluated not only in terms of test results, but more importantly, against all the measures of student learning that the district has put in place. Student performance results are evaluated on the basis of whether they are measurable, significant, and sustained over time. We also looked at some language from Global Best Practices, an internationally benchmarked self-assessment tool that's out there, which speaks to similar language around trying to identify what we've come to call evidence markers for each of these tasks, again, whether quantitative or qualitative, that really gives us some somewhat objective data that would suggest that over the course of time, we're making a difference and really improving the quality of our work. In our realm, as educators, this is very, very difficult. It's so hard to isolate the variables around what's impacting the extent to which we're implementing our action plans. So what we did is we actually engaged a fun exercise. We met with the principals, Matt Heffer. We met at each school over the course of the months of October and November. And we took in each of the meetings one of the 4 strands. And we looked at the common tasks that were in place. And we tried to work together to develop evidence markers that were driven by these attributes. We also took that opportunity to take a tour of the school, each of the schools. And as a high school principal over the years, I had never walked Miller Driscoll while the school was in session. So we did that. It was a time to show off. So Cheryl took us on the tour, and it really helped again build greater understanding that we are a system of schools, that this is a K-12 experience. So it was quite strategic and deliberate that as a group we engaged that exercise. So we were doing the hard work, but we were also having some fun on these tours, and I think that helped develop better understandings of what it is we're trying to accomplish here. The other nice thing is when we talked about the Miller-Driscoll issues around the building proctors, we all understood what you were talking about because we had all seen it. But anyways, the work really centered around what you'd see in the right-hand column here of this chart. This is a sample action plan worksheet that the buildings have all created around each of the focus areas. And we were working on that, again, that right-hand column around evidence markers. And we engaged in interesting exercise. We actually tried to predict in the fall what our evidence of success would look like in the spring. And we did that in 2 ways. We obviously tried to think about what success looks like and how do you measure it. But we also spent a lot of time thinking about what it doesn't look like. How do you know you're not successful? And in that way, we started to develop these evidence markers that again, we were trying to be quantitative, looking at preponderance of qualitative, anecdotal types of information. And Julia has graciously volunteered one of her action plan worksheets here that are in place. Just picture these being in place across all of these focus areas within each building. And what's going to happen in June when we come forward is we're going to focus on that right-hand column. And we're going to describe to you, hopefully, and put together a K-12 report that describes some of the evidence we've observed in response to trying to be somewhat productive and successful in responding to these prioritized tasks that were developed. So again, this was the process that we utilized this year. We think it was a worthwhile and good process. It's ongoing work. It's challenging work. We do have a joint meeting of our progress review teams coming up here in the middle of May. And we're going to talk more about how the year went. Each of the progress review teams has been meeting throughout the year with conversations around each of the strands. So we're getting feedback from that representative group. We'll come together again in May. And then that exciting and well-anticipated year-end report presentation that really, it almost elevates to the status of graduation in terms of how we report. So I just wanted to, as a closure point, I wanted to commend the work of our administrators and our instructional leaders. I hope the board recognizes the power of this group. Bob and Marie at the high school, and Julia, and Ginny, Cheryl, their administrative teams, the instructional leaders, and then of course our teachers, in taking this work seriously and engaging and understanding of how it can contribute to the success and mission of our district. So I just, I've in my role have just basically been trying to conduct the orchestra, and it's been amazing to watch how powerful these folks are. They're incredible instructional leaders, so I wanted to thank you for your work. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Questions?
Question. So these evidence markers,
Right.
on them, so they've now been identified for each and every strand for the entire strategic plan, or just for certain strands of
We
it?
made a determination this year that we were going to focus on these high priority
Okay.
tasks for this year. But at the same time, we're not ignoring all the other tasks that are varied. One thing you'll notice is that, and this is probably going to be a point of conversation in the evolution of the strategic plan in the out years, is so many of these tasks are interrelated. So that in working on one, you're really working on another.
Right.
So I think that helps. But I don't want to leave you thinking that we've deprioritized those other tasks. We define them as important. So we have been working on them. But we've been putting a lot of attention and energy for this year into these focus areas.
So when you report on June 14th, it'll all be focused around those specific
Primarily.
evident markers, or what the...
Right. As a new member of the board, you were not part of the conversation in the reporting of our year one results. And what we did
Watched it on TV, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's exciting stuff.
It was riveting.
I think you'll find some commonality between the two reports in that you really look for highlighted results. And it's almost natural then that many of the results and metrics that we bring to your attention in June will relate to these high priority areas because they're the highlighted result areas we want to bring to your attention.
I have a moving forward question. Next year is the third of 3 years in this plan.
Right.
How do you envision moving beyond to years 4 and 5? What will that process look like?
Well, Dr. Richardson and I have begun the conversation with the rest of our leadership team across the buildings about what kind of steps we're going to have to take in the coming school year to look at our strategic plan and define how to move forward. So those conversations are, to a large extent, in a very preliminary place. Our focus in this year really has been on implementation. But we're listening to the feedback that we're receiving primarily from our principals and our administrators, instructional leaders. And I think, to a large extent, it's just my view that many of the tasks and focus areas within the plan will roll over. They're the kinds of ideas and ambitious goals that you want to pursue on a regular basis. On the other hand, as I said a moment ago, I think one of the primary feedback areas we're receiving is that the plan is overly ambitious in terms of its scope. We have to figure out how to narrow its focus in terms of the language and how it's organized so it's more understandable. You hand that document over to folks, and I think it's just overwhelming, including the educators in the room. So,
and I think I agree with what Tim said. I think one of the other things too, Karen, that when you look at not only moving the plan in a direction that we think and hope to convince you there's the right policy direction for our district, is you look at some of the things that we are realities that are kind of going down the track. The Common Core, huge. Right. The changes that Chris alluded to tonight, possibly in teacher evaluation and administrator evaluation. Assessment practices. So I think that there are some things that are external drivers that we're going to have to meld into continue to work on, along with as Tim said, continuing on the work. We're behind when we go to tri-state meetings, and I say behind like it's this big race, but because we're all successful districts. But when you look at something like curriculum mapping, is that many districts, we didn't invest the way some of our counterparts have invested. So I think there still is work there. The technology piece, to really look at the role that Matt and the instructional leaders are playing as not just people who, as Matt said, worry about the boxes and the wires, but who really look at leveraging. Bruce talked about it at the town presentation that he made a couple weeks ago, is how technology is being leveraged for student learning, and I think that the role that they're playing. So all these things are really going to, I think, continue to be part of the plan, and along with whatever tweaks we think we need to make.
So a year from now, you'll be able to give us a much better roadmap before you see years 4 and 5.
Hopefully, I would think before then.
A year from now, we're going to have to deliberate on how best to bring. I would assume we're maybe looking at another 3-year plan in the out years, and we're going to have to bring that to the board's attention.
When you look at what Matt, I was rereading I shared with the Education Foundation the other night, some talking points on the 3-year tech plan, and how Matt had said in the preface to that there were many similarities, but here are some of the differences. So I think we may see something like that where there are some similarities, but there will be some significant differences that we have to identify fairly early on.
Right.
I know that on a number of these teams there are parents involved, members of the community who used to have kids in the district but no longer. I sit on the high school team, and Catherine Kempson's one of those. Some have expressed interest in finding ways to get involved. Who do they talk to? How do they find out more?
Just in terms of
potentially getting involved in the strategic planning
in this process. Well, if they're my reaction, if they're involved with the schools, in other words, if they have children in the schools, you want to reach out to the building principal as the first line. If these folks are community members or
let us know.
Yeah, I think then you're looking at a central office connection.
Okay, all right. That's been great. Thank you.
So hopefully the board has a good understanding of the process that we use this year, so that when we come forward in June, we can get right into the good stuff.
Because we were trying to, we know the poor board, we come with these reports sometimes and we kill you off with too much, so we were trying to set the table a little bit so that it's not overwhelming when we come back in June.
We've got pretty good appetite.
I know.
Thank
I didn't
you.
mean that as a shock.
No, I only put it back up.
Some years we had 8-hour meetings.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Next on the agenda, we have Ken Post with a financial report for February 2012. And this is our year-to-date financial.
Yes. As of the end of February, projecting an operating budget deficit of $19,210. Projected savings in salaries and heating oil are offset by an overage in special education contracted services. Salaries are under budget due to retirements and an education jobs fund grant that we got this year. Heating oil is under budget due to the mild winter, obviously. And we're hopeful that the positive variance in the oil account will grow as we close out the heating season, and it's remained pretty mild. The projected special education budget deficit is $411,380, again due to the overage of about $365,000 in contracted services. Contracted services exceed budget due to a number of unanticipated services needed for several of our students. Outplacements remain under budget, but we continue to monitor that account very closely. We filed our updated excess cost claim in March for $1,356,850. The latest information I have is from the state is that we should expect funding rate of about 65%, which would be approximately $882,000. And I have passed that information along to Sandy Denny's.
Funding rate for last year?
Last year was, I think, 73%. After the town credits the board for the special education deficit, we have a net surplus of $392,170. In health benefits for the year, expenditures are over budget by $317,073. And this is offset by the fact that our required OPEB contribution was $300,000 lower than the budget. Ed Norgard projects that our annual claims will remain over budget by about the same amount, which means we are projecting to end up relatively close to budget in total for the year. But again, we continue to monitor the health benefit claims very closely, and we'll report to the board if there are any significant variances in this trend. I'll take any questions you have.
Are unanticipated special ed costs pretty much expected?
Yes.
I came for the same answer, yes. That's what I figured.
It's sometimes it's unanticipated cost, and sometimes it's unanticipated students,
Right.
and sometimes it's both.
Okay.
And for those watching at home, OPEB stands for,
Other post-employment benefits.
and in that includes?
That's a lot of that is actually an actuarial calculation on the value of benefits promised to retirees, and the biggest piece of it, ironically, is the value of the health insurance benefits that our retired teachers are allowed to stay on our plan if they pay full price. But the actuaries figure that, on average, a retiree is going to cost us more than the average price. So they're paying $16,000. The actuary figures they're really going to cost us $23,000, and they've extrapolated that out to many years, like you do with a pension fund. So we have an unfunded liability, and there's a 20 or 30 year formula to catch up, and we normally have to fund, in addition to funding amount for our for the claims every year, we have to put in another usually $150,000 to $200,000, and we had budgeted a much larger amount for this year.
And those people can only stay on our plan until they're covered by Medicare.
Technically, the retired teachers can stay on as long as they want, and any teacher who was hired here before, I think, 1986 did not contribute to Medicare, so they would stay on longer.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're on to action items. We now only have one, which is to vote on the new budget at 1.75% with the adjustment coming out of the health benefits account. Do I have a motion to approve the budget as stated?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Future business, the timeline is on the website. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. I want to remind everybody to get out and vote, regardless of your feelings. And With that, I want to open it up to comments from the public. I can see by the audience that there is no public out there. So I will remind those of you on TV to email us at the email address on the district website. And with that, a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.